Welcome to the Explainer. Today we are diving into something we all do, and most of us think we're pretty good at, multitasking. But what is really going on inside our brains when we try to juggle it all? Let's find out.
You know the drill. You're in a meeting, but you're also sort of firing off a quick email. Or maybe you're watching a show, but your thumb has a mind of its own, scrolling endlessly through your feed. Sound familiar? This isn't just you, it's practically the signature move of the 21st century. And hey, the research totally backs us up. This isn't some quirky habit or a personal failing. Nope, it's a full-blown societal norm. We're living in this permanently online world, and our brains are in a constant race to keep up, splitting our attention into smaller and smaller pieces.
But here's the million-dollar question. What is the real cost of this constant mental juggling act? Are we actually becoming masters of efficiency, or are we just getting really, really good at being distracted? That's exactly what we're going to unpack.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The very first thing we have to do is completely shatter the biggest myth out there about how our brains handle doing more than one thing at a time.
So, most of us think of our brain as this amazing dual-core processor, running two complex programs at the exact same time, in perfect harmony. But that's the myth. The reality? Your brain is more like an incredibly fast single-core processor that is just a master of illusion. It's not doing two things at once, it's switching between them at lightning speed. And that rapid-fire switching, it actually has a name. It's called task switching. You can picture your attention as a spotlight. Your brain is just flicking that spotlight back and forth, email, meeting, email, meeting. It happens so fast that it feels seamless, but believe me, it's happening.
And here's the catch. Every single one of those switches, no matter how quick, comes with a price. Psychologists call it a switch cost. It's a tiny little penalty, a few milliseconds of lost time here, a slightly higher chance of making an error there. Now, one of those on its own is no big deal, but when you add up hundreds of them over the course of a day, yeah, they add up.
So why? Why do these costs even exist? Why can't our incredible brains just handle it? Well, it all boils down to one of the most fundamental limits of our minds, our attention.
Just think of your attention like a battery on your phone. You only have so much juice for the day. That's what researchers call your attentional resources. Every single task you do, from the big to the small, draws power from that battery. And if you try to run too many power-hungry apps at once, you know what happens. Everything slows down. The system starts to lag.
But you've probably noticed that some multitasking feels way easier than others, right? Well, there's a scientific reason for that. It's all about whether the tasks are competing for the same mental resources. So listening to a podcast while you're out for a jog, totally fine. One is auditory, the other is motor-based. They aren't fighting. But trying to read a dense article while writing an important email? Forget it. They're both battling for the exact same visual and language centers in your brain.
Okay, so let's look at what the actual research says, because you'd assume that people who multitask all the time would be amazing at it. I mean, practice makes perfect, doesn't it? Well, when scientists actually put this to the test, they found something nobody was expecting.
So this landmark study from Stanford back in 2009 did something pretty clever. They found two groups of people. The heavy media multitaskers, you know who they are, always juggling a phone, a laptop, and a TV, and the light media multitaskers, the folks who prefer to focus on one thing at a time. The big question was, do their brains actually work differently?
And the results were a total shocker. When they gave both groups a task that required them to ignore distractions, the heavy multitaskers were actually worse at it. Their performance completely tanked when irrelevant stuff was thrown at them. Meanwhile, the light multitaskers, they just filtered it out and carried on.
I mean, think about how wild that is. The very people who multitask the most seem to have trained their brains to be bad at the one thing that's absolutely crucial for multitasking, filtering out what doesn't matter. It's this massive paradox. But the story doesn't quite end there.
Of course not. Just when that conclusion seemed pretty solid, a more recent and much bigger study came along and added a fascinating new twist to the whole story.
So, get this. A 2022 study of over 1,500 people found that for younger folks, we're talking from age 7 all the way to 29, the exact opposite was true. The more they multitasked in their everyday lives, the better they performed on multitasking tests in the lab. So, what on earth is going on, right? How can both of these findings be true? How can multitasking make people worse at filtering distractions, but also make younger people better at the task itself? Well, a newer theory suggests maybe we're looking at this all wrong. Maybe it's not about a failure of focus.
Maybe it's about a drive for exploration.
This idea is called the Exploitation-Exploration Model, and it basically says that task switching isn't a bug in our system, it might actually be a feature. It's our brain's natural way of trying to balance two critical needs: the need to dig in and get stuff done, and the need to scan our environment for new, maybe better opportunities. Here's how it works. First, you exploit a task. Say you're studying for a big test. You're in deep. But eventually, your focus starts to fade. The task gets tough or just plain boring. That's when you switch to exploration. You grab your phone, check a few notifications, something easy with an instant reward. And here's the cool part. That little exploratory break might actually act as a mental reset, helping you go back to the hard task with renewed energy.
So, after all that, where does this leave us? Is multitasking good for us, bad for us, or is it something else entirely? Let's bring it all home.
All right, here's what we know. 1. Your brain is a master task switcher, not a true multitasker, and every switch costs you a little something. 2. Some studies show chronic multitaskers are actually more distractible. 3. But for younger, developing brains, more practice might actually lead to better performance. And 4. There's this new idea that maybe this is all just a natural cycle of deep focus and exploration.
The real bottom line is this: multitasking isn't simply good or bad. It's way more complicated than that. It's a complex trade-off our brain is constantly making, a delicate balancing act between the need for deep focus and the innate human drive to seek out what's new and interesting.
So the next time you find yourself juggling 5 different screens and a dozen tabs, just take a second and ask yourself, am I really being more efficient right now, or am I just doing everything a little more poorly? It's a question worth focusing on. That's all for this edition of The Explainer.